Butter should be one of the simplest foods on the entire supermarket shelf. Cream and a pinch of salt if you want it. That's the whole recipe, and it's been the whole recipe for centuries. So why does the butter aisle in your local Tesco or Sainsbury's now stretch for 15 feet, packed with tubs promising to be lighter, softer, more spreadable, more heart-healthy, more natural? I went through 8 of the UK's most bought butter and spread brands, checked what's legally allowed to be called butter under the regulations that actually govern this category, and compared that against what's sitting in the tub. What I found is a shelf where half the products don't meet the legal definition of butter at all, where brand names built on genuine dairy heritage are being stretched across products that barely resemble the original, and where the price of the real thing has become so volatile that plenty of shoppers have been quietly priced out of buying it. Here's what's actually going on in the UK butter aisle. First, the bit nobody tells you, and everybody should know before we go any further. Under retained EU law that still applies in the UK, the word butter is a legally protected term. To carry that name on the front of the tub, a product has to contain at least 80% milk fat, with a maximum water content of 16%. Drop below that threshold and the law requires a different name entirely: a dairy spread, a butter preparation, a blended spread, depending on exactly how far the milk fat content has fallen. That single piece of regulation is the key to understanding almost everything wrong with this category. Now, the crazy part is that manufacturers aren't lying when they put the word butter somewhere on the packaging. They're using it exactly as far as the law allows them to, and then relying on branding, imagery, and careful wording to blur the line between what's technically permitted and what a shopper actually believes they're buying. Number 1. Clover. Clover has sat in British fridges for decades, built around the promise of British milk and a spread that comes straight out of the fridge without tearing the toast underneath it. Both claims are genuinely true. What sits alongside them on the ingredients panel is rapeseed oil, palm oil, and a list of emulsifiers, because a product that spreads at fridge temperature, the way Clover does, simply isn't achievable with dairy fat alone. Milk fat is solid at low temperatures. That's precisely why it needs help to behave the way Clover's marketing promises. You're not buying a diluted butter. Under the legal definitions that actually govern this category, you're buying a blended spread, a genuinely different product with dairy included as one ingredient among several, rather than the entire point of the product. Number 2. Flora Original. For the best part of 3 decades, Flora built its entire identity on the idea that vegetable-based spread was the heart-healthy alternative to butter, and that messaging shaped how an entire generation of British shoppers thought about saturated fat. The nutritional science underpinning that pitch has moved on considerably since then. The relationship between saturated fat, unsaturated fat, and cardiovascular risk turned out to be far more nuanced than the simple vegetable oil good, animal fat bad story that sold so many tubs through the 1990s and 2000s. Flora reformulated its recipe in 2019, which did remove some of the more questionable ingredients from earlier versions. What's left is still a blend built predominantly on sunflower oil, and sunflower oil is extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids. Most UK diets already run well over the recommended ratio of omega-6 to omega-3, an imbalance that nutrition researchers have repeatedly linked to low-grade systemic inflammation. Flora never claimed to be butter, and to be fair to the brand, it's always labelled itself honestly as a spread. The issue is that millions of shoppers are still buying it specifically because they believe the health story it built decades ago. Number 3. Lurpak Spreadable. This is the one that catches people off guard, because Lurpak's block butter has a genuinely excellent reputation, and it's earned that reputation. Lurpak Spreadable trades on the exact same name, the exact same blue and white packaging language, but it isn't the same product. To make dairy fat spread straight from a cold fridge, manufacturers blend in rapeseed oil to lower the melting point, landing on a formula that works out at roughly half butter, half vegetable oil, held together with emulsifiers. The dairy component is still higher quality than most competitors on this list, which is worth crediting, but you're paying Lurpak's premium price, and Lurpak has one of the steepest premiums in the entire category, for a tub that's genuinely half vegetable oil by composition. During the cost of living spike, a 750-gram tub of Lurpak Spreadable was recorded hitting over £7 in some Sainsbury's stores, with a full kilo pushing past £9 in others, driven by rising vegetable oil costs after the invasion of Ukraine disrupted global sunflower oil supply. Sadly, shoppers were paying record prices for a product that's only half the thing its name and reputation implies. Number 4. Anchor Spreadable. Anchor's heritage is genuine. It's a New Zealand dairy cooperative brand with a real history in grass-fed pasture farming, and the block butter earns its reputation honestly. The spreadable version follows the identical formula every other spreadable on this list relies on. Rapeseed oil blended in to soften the texture, emulsifiers to hold the mixture together, and a noticeably diluted dairy content compared to the block. What makes Anchor's spreadable line particularly worth flagging is how heavily the marketing still leans on New Zealand pasture imagery and grass-fed positioning, when the rapeseed oil making up roughly half the product has nothing to do with New Zealand farming at all. It's a conventionally produced vegetable oil, blended in during UK or European processing. The premium you're paying reflects a heritage story that genuinely only applies to part of what's in the tub, so it's not worth it. Number 5. I can't believe it's not butter. The name is doing a lot of work, and it's worth pointing out that it's also a fairly accurate description of the product, because there genuinely is no butter in it. It's a blend of vegetable oils, water, a small amount of buttermilk, salt, and emulsifiers, with the buttermilk included largely so the label can legitimately reference dairy at all. The dominant fats are palm oil and rapeseed oil, and palm oil brings its own set of problems entirely separate from nutrition. Global demand for palm oil remains one of the biggest drivers of tropical deforestation, and its cultivation has been repeatedly linked by conservation researchers to habitat loss for critically endangered species, including orangutans and Sumatran tigers. On the health side, palm oil is also relatively high in saturated fat, which sits awkwardly against a product that spent years marketing itself on a health platform built around avoiding exactly that. So, you're paying close to the price of a genuine dairy spread for a vegetable oil blend with trace dairy, and once you weigh the palm oil sourcing against the cost, the value case gets considerably harder to defend. Number 6. Stork. Stork has been part of British home baking for generations, propped up by decades of recipe books and television baking shows that treat it as a reliable, functional ingredient. For certain baking applications, it genuinely does behave differently to butter in ways some recipes are built around. But it's worth being honest about what it actually is. The standard Stork block contains no dairy whatsoever. None. It's built from vegetable oils and water, held together with a comparatively heavy load of emulsifiers, because without them the oil and water would simply separate back out in the tub. Decades of familiarity have normalized Stork as a kitchen staple, but familiarity isn't the same thing as a wholesome ingredient list. Sadly, it's what happens when a genuinely industrial fat product gets marketed successfully enough for long enough that nobody questions it anymore. Number 7. Utterly Butterly. The name is engineered to sit as close to the word butter as branding law allows, without actually crossing the line, and the product inside matches that positioning exactly. Vegetable oils make up the bulk of it, with a small amount of buttermilk added mainly for flavor and label credibility. The water content is high, which is a straightforward way for manufacturers to bulk out volume without spending on fat content, meaning gram for gram, you're getting meaningfully less actual fat than a block of real butter, even though the tub looks like similar value on the shelf. Number 8. Country Life Spreadable. Country Life's block butter is a legitimate, well-regarded British dairy product. The spreadable version borrows the same trusted name and the same Union Jack, countryside heritage branding to sell something fundamentally different, a blend built around rapeseed oil, emulsifiers, and a substantially higher water content than the block version it shares shelf space with. The brand equity built up over decades by an honest dairy product is being used to move a processed oil blend at a premium price point, trading on an association with traditional British farming that the spreadable version simply doesn't reflect. If this kind of ingredient panel digging is useful to you, a subscribe genuinely helps more people see it before their next big shop. No sponsorship behind any of this, just checking what's legally allowed to sit under each name. So what's actually worth buying? 2 products on this list meet the legal definition of butter without any qualification, and both are widely available in UK supermarkets. The first is Kerrygold, made from the milk of grass-fed Irish cows, a claim that's independently verifiable given how Ireland's dairy farming system is structured around pasture grazing for the vast majority of the year. Grass-fed dairy has been shown in nutritional research to carry meaningfully higher levels of conjugated linoleic acid and omega-3 fatty acids compared to milk from grain-fed herds. The ingredient list runs to 2 items in the unsalted version: cream and nothing else, with salt added in the standard tub. No emulsifiers, no rapeseed oil, no water bulking out the volume. The second is Lurpak's actual block butter, not the spreadable tub sitting next to it on the shelf. The block is made from pasteurized cream with a small amount of lactic culture added during production, the traditional Danish method that gives Lurpak its distinctive tang, and it meets the 80% milk fat threshold the law requires, without needing any qualifying word attached to the name. It costs more than the blended spreads sitting around it, and given butter prices across Europe rose by close to a fifth between late 2023 and late 2024 alone, driven by a genuine global milk supply shortage rather than manufacturer markup, that cost increase is largely down to what dairy farmers are actually being paid, not a branding exercise. Here's the wider point worth taking away from all of this. Real butter, eaten as part of an otherwise balanced diet, isn't the dietary villain it was positioned as for the better part of 30 years, and current NHS guidance treats it as fine in moderation rather than something to avoid outright. The spreads that replaced it in millions of British kitchens weren't necessarily a health upgrade. In some cases, they simply swapped one set of nutritional trade-offs for another while marketing themselves more effectively. The law is actually on your side here, because the word butter is legally protected in a way that most food categories aren't. Check the ingredients panel before the price tag. If cream isn't the first ingredient, and salt isn't the second, you're not looking at butter, you're looking at a blend, priced and packaged to make you think otherwise. So make your decision wisely.